Well, hello everyone. Happy week 3 and happy Wednesday. I hope you're all doing well. I graded the discussion board and your assignments, and you guys are doing a great job. Just make sure you keep an eye out for spelling and grammar and those sorts of things. I didn't bust anybody hard this time, but I may in the future, so make sure you double check that. I appreciated your discussion board commentary. It looks like you guys got some good information from the tools, and I loved how you were sharing the information with each other and how you were also showing empathy to fellow classmates, your peers, when they'd had frustrating situations with their own students, which is exactly what we want to do on these online discussion boards. So since we don't get to talk about it in person. So week 3, you are looking at the Universal Design for Learning, UDL Basics. And even though this class is on leveraging technology, Universal Design talks about leveraging the playing field of curriculum for all, which is very important. Because it's not just necessarily the tools that a child may need to be successful, it's also how they gather, hold, and then present information. And we're finding that the one-size-fits-all mentality of our society no longer works for the society we are today. And so you will hear about this again in brain-based research. They're going to talk about it a lot. Fisher and Frey talk about this. There's a bunch of educators, in TED Talks about this differentiated instruction and creating universal design where it fits all learners individually. But as educators, that can be kind of difficult in the classroom to start working out and figuring out your curriculum. And it's always good to start wrapping your mind around it before the school year starts, or use a year as a pilot year as you're trying to figure out how to create the universal design, and then have the next year as your year where you really try to put everything into place. Now, in California, we're highly focused on CTE, which, if you haven't heard, is career technical education. And many schools and school districts are embracing career technical education, where they are now seeing that instead of just having, the one-size-fits-all education for all students, they are grouping students into what they are interested in, and then hoping that by being in this cohort, this group that all kind of are involved in a certain type of activity, that it will fit these learners as a whole. So you have, SLC, a small learning community for criminal justice and forensics, and you have an SLC for environmental science, and you have an SLC for business, and you have an SLC for arts, media, and entertainment. And the focus is to not only teach your curriculum, the curriculum that you're mandated to teach, through the lens of that CTE, but also to find ways to create alternative assessments for students, individuals, to present their information on their own terms. And so, like I said, that's a lot to figure out in a classroom. So say for me, my small learning community is arts, media, and entertainment. And I teach 11th grade English, honors English. So therefore, I have to look at how am I going to pull in arts, media, and entertainment to my English class with the curriculum that I have. What can I tie to it? How can I make connections to the industry? And then how can I allow these students to present the material to me for assessment that shows off their knowledge of arts, media, and entertainment? So just recently we did the Crucible. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So instead of just reading the play from the book, we also listened to an audio performance of theatricals, Michael York and Richard Dreyfuss, doing it as if you were listening to it on the radio. We also watched the film with Winona Ryder and Daniel Day-Lewis. And so we're looking at these different arts and media and entertainment things related to this English curriculum. And so how I then modify that, how I create universal design, is based on what my students are interested in. So my theatricals may be looking at the Crucible from a theatrical perspective, how it was staged, who would be cast, does the way somebody sounds or look matter to the production, how would you create diversity in something like the Crucible if you were to perform it today, and still keep the classic story intact. Maybe my sound students and my musicians might be looking at how would they recreate the audio from a broadcast like that to make it performance worthy for all listeners? Or they might look at the film and see how they used music to create mood or intensity. Whereas my visual artist might be looking at camera angles. Are there symbols? Why were these symbols used? Why was this camera angle used? And then we also might study things like the playwright Arthur Miller, his role in playwriting. And then we might also look at it financially as well, since we're Long Beach, outside of Los Angeles, and we are in the film industry. Was it a viable film when they made The Crucible? Did it make money? And if so, how do films make money? So you can see that we would look at it from all of these angles that they're interested in, their arts, media, and entertainment. And then when it came time to assessments, it's not just doing a traditional ABCD multiple choice assessment test or an essay about The Crucible, although those would be probably involved in the lesson as well. But then I also would probably look at either multimedia presentations, collaborative student work. I might look at the students doing, excuse me, the dogs are barking. Hang on one second. I'm going to get on my crutch and close the door. It's going to take me a second. I'm coming back. Okay. I'm getting pretty good on this thing. Okay. Artists might create a visual representation, maybe a piece of art that represents the Crucible to them. Or maybe my theatricals might act out an entire scene or a monologue. Maybe my musicians would rescore the film, and we would take a part where there was just music in it and turn down the sound and have them score over the top of it. So we're finding ways to leverage that playing field so that all students have their individual universal learning plan, but they're still getting the content, but in a way that works for them to shine if maybe they're not a traditional learner. And so that's what we want to look at when we're looking at universal design for learning. And there's a lot more, but I don't want to get long-winded in this, as I often do. The other thing that you have to think about when you're doing universal design, and it's one of the things that they talk about in the presentation, is do your students all have, is there equity related to technology? And I may have brought that up before, or maybe it was the class before this, I'm not sure. But one of the things that you have to remember when you're doing things like leveraging technology is, say you want to do a flipped classroom assignment where you're doing a video like this that's going home and the kids are going to open their computer and they're going to watch YouTube and they're going to hear you do this fabulous lesson, and their family can be involved if they want to. And then the next day they come back to class and then you do the work related to the lesson. So it's like the homework was actually the lecture, and now the traditional homework is what you're working on together in class. Well, that's fabulous. And that's a really cool use of technology, because now you've conquered your visual learners, your audio learners, your little techie kids. There's a lot of great pluses for this. However, do all students have computer access at home? Do students all have the ability to sign in and see your video? And these are the things that you have to think about when you're leveraging technology, is equality. Because one, it's illegal to not make things equal. But more than that, it doesn't leverage the playing field if some students have access to what you are trying to do with technology and some students don't. You know, are you going to find a way to provide this? Does the school have a learning center or a library where these kids can go and do this lesson after school before they go home? You know, how are you going to make this work? So those are some of the things that you have to think about as well. It's a lot, but I will tell you that once you get a handle on universal design, it becomes really powerful in your classroom. It allows flexibility with students. It allows you to step back and take more of a mentor position. It allows more student-based learning. It allows students to teach each other and, you know, kind of remove you from the playing field so that they can start empowering themselves. And there's a lot of great things related to universal design. It's just finding the time to sit down and make it happen. It's not going to happen overnight if you haven't been doing it. And it's something, like I said, it's best to like take a pilot year and kind of figure out what works, what doesn't for your students, and then move from there. And don't be hard on yourself while you try, because it's a lot to do. You guys all know differentiating instruction, scaffolding, alternative assessments. It takes time. And time is something that we as educators don't often have. So just know this is not an overnight process. This is something that you work on over time to help benefit your students in the future. I hope you have a wonderful week. Don't forget, discussion board on Thursday, final responses by Sunday. Please contact me by email if you need me. I will be here. Take care.